Welcome back to Road to Destruction, the World Wars. In our last episode, a member of the Black Hand assassinated the heir to the Austria Hungary throne, causing Europe to go into meltdown. On the night of June 28, 1914, Wilhelm II sat aboard his yacht in the North Sea, basking in the warmth of a summer evening. Meanwhile, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand had sent shockwaves through Europe. But to the Kaiser, this was not yet a crisis. It was an opportunity. He believed Austria-Hungary had suffered an unforgivable humiliation, and now, at last, they had a justification to crush Serbia. What Wilhelm did not yet realize was that his response to this moment would ignite a chain reaction, a fuse leading directly to the catastrophe of World War I. When news of the assassination reached Wilhelm, his first instinct was one of outrage, but also of restraint. He had met Franz Ferdinand several times and found him stiff and difficult. Yet his murder by a Serbian nationalist struck at the very foundations of monarchical rule. Despite his usual bombast, Wilhelm initially counseled Austria-Hungary to be cautious. He believed Serbia should be punished, but war, that was not inevitable, not yet. Then something changed. Wilhelm became convinced, perhaps through his own advisors, perhaps through his own ego, that this was not just about Austria-Hungary avenging Franz Ferdinand. This was about Germany, standing by its only real ally. His mood darkened. The assassin, Gavrilo Princip, was a mere pawn. The true enemy, Wilhelm decided, was Russia. He saw the hand of his cousin, Tsar Nicholas II, behind Serbia's defiance. If Austria-Hungary did not act swiftly and decisively, Serbia would only grow stronger, and Russia would only become more emboldened. By early July, Wilhelm's hesitation had vanished. He declared to his ministers that Austria-Hungary should take whatever measures necessary against Serbia. Germany, he assured them, would stand by its ally no matter what. This was the moment the infamous blank check was signed, not a literal document, but an unspoken promise of unconditional German support. Wilhelm's decision to grant Austria-Hungary a free hand was rooted in a mix of arrogance, fear, and miscalculation. He believed that Russia, still reeling from its humiliating defeat in the Russo-Japanese War, would never risk a full-scale conflict. More importantly, he saw this crisis as a way to reinforce Germany's position in Europe. For years, Wilhelm had watched his once firm alliances unravel, his own reckless diplomacy, letting the reinsurance treaty with Russia lapse, antagonizing Britain with his naval build-up, alienating France through constant saber-rattling, had left Germany encircled. Austria-Hungary was his last real partner. If he allowed them to appear weak, Germany would stand alone. The German military, led by General Helmuth von Moltke, embraced Wilhelm's decision with alarming enthusiasm. They saw war as not just likely but necessary. Moltke, a rigid strategist obsessed with preemptive action, was convinced that if war came, it should be on Germany's terms. The sooner, the better, he told Wilhelm. Russia grows stronger by the year. And so, with a single reckless promise, Wilhelm set Austria-Hungary on a path of no return. Emboldened by Wilhelm's backing, Austria-Hungary drafted an ultimatum so extreme it was practically designed to be rejected. Serbia was given 48 hours to comply with 10 harsh demands, including allowing Austro-Hungarian officials to operate freely within Serbian borders, an outright attack on Serbian sovereignty. Wilhelm, upon reading the ultimatum, was thrilled. "Brilliant," he reportedly exclaimed. "Now even the English will see how justified we are." He remained convinced that Serbia would cave under pressure and that Russia, despite its bluster, would not act. But Wilhelm had severely misread the situation. As soon as the ultimatum became public, alarm bells rang in Russia. Tsar Nicholas II, Wilhelm's cousin, Nicky, was placed in an impossible position. Serbia was a fellow Slavic nation, and Russian public opinion demanded action. Nicholas had spent years trying to maintain peace with Germany, despite Wilhelm's repeated provocations, but this was a direct challenge. Wilhelm, ever the erratic diplomat, sent Nicholas a series of personal letters, appealing not as one ruler to another, but as family. "Dear Nicky," he wrote, urging his cousin to restrain Serbia and avoid war. Nicholas, torn between his friendship with Wilhelm and his duty to Russia, pleaded for Austria to soften its stance. "A disgraceful war has been declared on a weak country," he wrote. "I beg you to stop your allies." But it was too late. The German government, especially the military, had already concluded that war was coming. Wilhelm might have had second thoughts. He even briefly suggested a last-minute peace conference, but his advisers ignored him. Germany's war machine was in motion. The Kaiser's faith in Austria Hungary was misplaced. While he believed they were acting decisively, in reality, they were slow and disorganized. Days passed without an official declaration of war. Wilhelm grew impatient, ranting to his ministers that Austria needed to act now or risk losing Germany's full support. When Serbia responded to the ultimatum, it was with surprising humility. They agreed to nearly every demand, except the one that would violate their sovereignty. Wilhelm saw this as a victory, a great moral success for Vienna, he wrote. "Now there is no need for war." But Austria Hungary, egged on by its own hawkish leaders, had no interest in peace. On July 28th, they declared war on Serbia. The dominoes were beginning to fall. The moment Austria Hungary's declaration became public, Wilhelm realized the gravity of the situation. Russia began mobilizing its forces, and suddenly, the war he had assured everyone would remain localized was threatening to spiral into something much bigger. He panicked. Wilhelm ordered frantic telegrams to Vienna, telling them to halt operations and seek mediation. He reached out to Nicholas once again, trying to defuse the crisis, but it was no longer in his hands. The German military, along with Austria-Hungary, had already embraced the inevitability of war. When Russian mobilization became official, Wilhelm's remaining doubts disappeared. On August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. 2 days later, they declared war on France. The great European war Wilhelm had spent years trying to avoid, while simultaneously making it inevitable, had begun. As the German Empire marched toward war, the alliances Wilhelm had once treated as trivial now turned against him. Britain, France, and Russia had spent years wary of one another, but now, faced with the growing threat of Germany, they found themselves bound together. Wilhelm had not just given Austria-Hungary a blank check, he had given Europe a death sentence. And soon, the entire continent would be engulfed in flames. And with that, we are nearly at the end of this series covering Germany prior to World War I through Otto von Bismarck and Wilhelm II. The last video will be on the decision for Germany to declare war, but the next video will briefly delve into how the domino effect of alliance came into place after the assassination and which way the British Empire would fall on the conflict. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to make sure you don't miss it as well as the next series.